Dear students, especially Mr. Palash and Miss Kajal, I welcome both of you in this class. Today is 9th February 2025 and time is 11:40 a.m. So this class continues on principles of crop production or principles of agronomy. I have already taken 2 lectures and this is third lecture in the series. I covered some of the aspects related to principles of crop production. So particularly we could know what is principle, what is crop, and then what is meant by principles of crop production. We could also see what is field crop, what is production, and crop production. And I tried to explain you the meaning of principles of crop production and practices of crop production. So principles are just theoretical or written information or written guidelines, and practices are actually what is being done based upon the principle. The thing which is done in the field is your practice. So you could see it. And then overall, what is the aim of crop production? Aim of crop production is to get good yields, get maximum profit for the farmers, and preserve the soil and environment, or you can say preserve the natural resources and improve the above ground and below ground biodiversity. So overall, these are the aims. And then principles, as you know, principle of agronomy, there is no as such any list of principles. So in agronomy, we have variety of practices. Variety of practices like we go for soil management, we go for seed and sowing, we have effect of climate and weather on crop production, and we should also know what are the factors that affect the growth of the plant. So there are certain principles that govern the growth of the plant, and also there are principles of tillage, land preparation, or farm machinery. Similarly, you got principles of crop rotations, principles of nutrient management, weed management, or sometimes we go for dryland farming, rainfed farming. There are certain principles, and then rainland pasture management, harvesting, there are some principles, and marketing and profitability, there are some principles. So all these aspects, there may be many, some more aspects that can be added to it. But in brief, we will discuss how or what are the principles of all these different components of crop production. So I can also call them as component of crop production or aspects of crop production, or you can also say these could become practices also. So principles are soil management, but what would be the principle? So principle of soil management could be the topmost principle of soil management could be stoppage of soil erosion. We should prevent soil erosion. We should improve the fertility of the soil. So these should be the principles. And how it is done? You know the practices for soil management. So some fundamental rules are different, principles are different, and practices are also different. So we'll discuss all these important principles related to climate, weather, soil health and fertilization, crop rotations and diversification. I just summarized them like this. So this was just written in a haphazard way, but here I have written them separately to make you understand what are the principles of climate and weather, how they affect our crops, and what practices can be followed to overcome any issues, any problems, any constraint generated by climate and weather. Climate and weather may not always be favorable for crop production. There may be some issues related to climate and weather. So I'll discuss it, and then what are the principles of soil health or soil fertility management, crop rotations, what are the principles or guidelines for variety selection, seed selection, sowing methods, water management principles, weed management principles. So everywhere we have principles. I'll try to discuss in brief all these principles. So before I start speaking on climate and weather, I already suggested you to read one chapter on meteorology. Agricultural meteorology, you must study what are different meteorological parameters, how they are measured. Number one is rainfall. Number two is temperature, can be maximum, minimum temperature, and then relative humidity, sunshine hours, wind speed. So first of all, we need to understand all these factors, how these factors will affect the crop growth. So climatic factors I will discuss separately. What are the climatic factors and how they can affect the plant growth? Here, I would just discuss the difference in weather and climate and atmosphere. So first of all, let us try to make differences in atmosphere, climate, weather, and also environment. Palash, these are the four terms usually confuse the students. Weather, climate, environment, and atmosphere. So any one of you know what do you know about these four terms? How we can differentiate them? What is the meaning of all these four terms? So let us start with atmosphere. Atmosphere means the sphere, the portion of the earth, above the earth, that contains air, or that contains air is your atmosphere. Means the layer of air above the earth is atmosphere. Is it like this, or you have some other idea about atmosphere? Batao, kuch batao. What do you think? What is atmosphere? We say atmospheric pollution. So atmosphere means from the earth up to the level we have air. Up to the level we have air, and definitely before the space. You got the point? The earth is surrounded by a layer of air, and that portion is called as atmosphere. Okay? Now let us take environment. Environment, the external surrounding of an organism. The external surrounding of an organism is called as his or her or its environment. External surrounding may be with respect to us, what kind of weather is there around us, what kind of house we are living in, means that is our environment. Similarly, environment of the plant. In the plant's environment, there may be some other plants also. There may be other organism also. So there may be some biotic factors and abiotic factors in the environment of an individual. If you see the water environment, you can see some jheel or some ponds or some other water bodies. In water bodies also, you got some plants, some organism, some soil, and some mud. So this is the environment. This is called as environment. Means in a particular place, what are the biotic and abiotic component? Those together, all those together make up the environment. Is it okay? Atmosphere is air containing layer above the earth. Environment is external surrounding of an organism, is environment. So two things are clear. Now we go to weather. What is weather? So weather is day-to-day changes in atmospheric attributes. Day-to-day changes in atmospheric attributes or atmospheric characters or characteristics. Means atmospheric components or characteristics or attributes or parameters, you see how they changes, how temperature of the air changes daily, how the wind speed, it is also atmospheric character, wind speed, wind direction. So how they change daily to daily or day to day, or you can say from day to night or in 24 hours, how they are changing. So weather is for a very brief period. And when we take the average, long-term average of weather events, these can also be called as weather events. When we take the long-term average of weather events, it becomes your climate. If continuously we receive high temperatures, if we receive high temperature continuously for long period round the year, then definitely it will be a tropical kind of climate. Tropical kind. If we get too much of rainfall round the year, or for most part of the year, then it may be definitely some humid climate. It will give us high rainfall area or humid climate. Wherever we have less rainfall, there we can get dry climate. So all these parameters, atmospheric parameter, if we take long-term average, that may be say for 30 years, then it becomes climate. So number of climatic classifications are there. You can study some classification of climate, how climate is classified. So this climate and weather, they have very significant influence on our crops, our plants. So there are certain principles related to climate and weather, particularly rainfall and temperature, latitude and also longitude, latitude and longitude. So they are also important. So definitely we know that the climate and weather, they influence the crop growth, they influence the development and yield. So we need to manage the effect of climate and weather parameters on crops, crop yields can be increased if we have understanding of principles that can manage the climate and weather parameters. For example, temperature, moisture, sunlight, humidity, wind, climatic variability. So for this, you can go for weather forecasting and agro advisory. Let me try to make you more clear about it. So there may be number of climatic events that can affect our crop. For example, excess rainfall. So excess rainfall, in case of excess rainfall, so what is the principle? Principle is that excess water should be removed from the crop. If there is deficiency of water, deficiency of rainfall, then what would be the principle? That we should follow the practices that conserve the water in soil. Likewise, if there is high temperature, if there is kind of hot weather that can adversely affect our crop, so we need to follow principle. We need to follow principle. How we can save our crop from the extremes of weather, extremes of temperature. So in this case, practice can be mulching. Practice can be mulching. Practice can be intercropping. Through intercropping, shading effect will be there, and we can lower the temperature of the canopy. So this is how we need to know certain principles of climate and weather events and how they can be managed through practices. I will go in detail when I teach you principle of these factors affecting crop growth. So I'll deal in detail climatic factors, how they can affect the plant growth and how we can manage the climatic factors that suits to the plants. Now, soil health or fertilization, physical, chemical, and biological properties of the soil. You know, soil fertility and soil health are quite different terms. Soil fertility tells us the status of the nutrient. What is the content of the available nutrients in the soil? Or it tells us the quantity and capacity of soil to supply the nutrients in balanced and adequate amounts. Soil should be able to supply plant nutrients or essential plant nutrients in balanced and adequate amounts. That is soil fertility. Coming to soil health is equivalent to soil quality. They are synonymous. There is no difference in soil health and soil quality. Scientists mostly call it soil quality, and popular press and media and general public, they call it soil health. So both physical, chemical, and biological properties of the soil influence soil health as well as soil fertility. Now coming to define the soil health or soil quality, it is the capacity of a particular soil to perform its functions normally under the boundary of an agroecosystem. So soil health is the capacity of soil to perform its functions normally under the boundary of an agroecosystem. So agroecosystem, you understand, it is artificial system. Farmers, where they are doing cultivation, is your artificial system. Arable cultivation, this is your agroecosystem, where farmers are growing crop. It is not natural ecosystem. It is artificial ecosystem. Therefore, it is called as agroecosystem, because here we grow crops. We grow crops by using some artificial means. So therefore, we cannot call it natural ecosystem. It is our agroecosystem. So in agroecosystem, you have soil. If this particular soil can perform its functions, then it will be called as a healthy soil. Let us know what are the functions that are performed by the soil. Number one function performed by soil is that it provides support to the plant. Without soil, plant cannot stand erect. They cannot grow. So they provide anchorage through the roots. Anchorage, A-N-C-H-O-R-A-G, anchorage. So plants get support, number one. Number two, that plants get nutrients from the soil. They get water from the soil, means soil provides nutrients to the plants. Soil provides water to the plants. Soil do the job of filtration. It also filters the constituents. Sometimes, lot of pollutants may enter the soil through water, but soil acts as a filter. Otherwise, our groundwater will have lot of pollutants. If soil is not filtering certain substances, all substances, including fertilizer, can go to the soil, so to the groundwater. Therefore, soil also acts as a filter. It also acts as a nutrient cycler, cycling of nutrients. Whenever you add organic matter, soil will decompose, mineralize the organic matter, and provide the nutrients. It also makes humus. So it acts as it recycles the nutrients, recycling of nutrients. And another important function of soil is that it detoxifies the toxic substances. Soil can degrade the toxic material into non-toxic material, isn't it? You use a lot of pesticide, lot of herbicide in soil, but soil has capability to make them neutral, to make them non-toxic. So this is also important function of soil. The last and important function of soil is that it gives you a space to make buildings, to make road. We use soil. You know how these bricks are made? जो ईंट होता है, जिससे घर बनता है, बिल्डिंग बनता है. Where from this ईंट come? Brick. It comes from soil. We make our houses on the soil. So therefore, you can see that soil has number of functions. So if a soil is able to perform its functions normally, then we will call it a healthy soil. So you can see, similarly, there are 3 principles of soil fertility. You can write 3 important functions of principles of soil fertility. First important principle of soil fertility is law of minimum. Law of minimum is the first important principle of soil fertility. So as I told you before, that principle sometimes becomes law. जो सिद्धांत है उसको कानून भी बोल देते हैं. principle can become law. So law of minimum is the first principle of soil fertility management. Now you will ask me, sir, how come this law of minimum becomes a principle of soil fertility management? It is because law of minimum tells us about the balanced fertilization. Law of minimum guides us that balanced fertilization is necessary. How this law of minimum guides us that balanced fertilization is necessary? It is like this. Because we know what is law of minimum means, the growth and yield. The growth and yield of plants or crops will be governed by the nutrient element which is present in least amount, lowest amount, minimum quantity in the soil. That will determine the growth and yield of the crop. The nutrient which is present in the minimum amount in the soil will determine the utilization and utilization of other nutrients for better plant growth, better yield. You can read law of minimum from any book, any standard book. Here, I just want to tell you that law of minimum is number one principle of soil fertility management. It guides us, it tells us about doing balanced fertilization. Means all the nutrients should be supplied in balanced amounts to the plant. If imbalance happens, the growth will be adversely affected. Suppose if you add more and more zinc to the soil, or if you add more and more phosphorus to the soil, they will affect availability of each other adversely. If your soils have more phosphorus, they will reduce the availability of zinc. If your soils have more or greater amount of zinc, it will adversely affect the availability of phosphorus. So by imbalance, if we make imbalance of nutrient in soil, the supply of nutrients, balanced supply of the nutrients will be adversely affected. Therefore, many times, if you know that NPK fertilization, the ideal ratio is 4:1. You remember 4:2:1. This ratio is suggested that we should go for balanced fertilization or balanced nutrition of the crops. So number one law is law of minimum. Number two law is law of synchrony. Law of synchrony. SYNCHRONY. Law of synchrony. Synchronous means साथ-साथ. Synchrony means just kind of matching. Synchrony means matching. You know, the plants require nutrients throughout their growing period. But at certain stages of plant growth, the nutrient requirement is more. And at certain stages of crop growth, the nutrient requirement may be low. For example, when crop germinate, for first 10-15 days, there will not be any nutrient requirement because the food is supplied from the seed. For young seedling, food is supplied through the seeds. And at that time, roots are also not developed. So plant during initial growth, most plant rely for their food on their seed. They also do not have roots. Therefore, when the seedling stage is passed, they start growing, then the nutrient demand will increase. And it can reach maximum at flowering stage. So it varies. And at the later stage of the crop growth, the nutrient requirement may further go down. So our soil should be able to supply the quantity of nutrient demanded by the plant. Whatever quantity is required by the plant, soil should be able to supply that amount to the plants. Then it is called as synchrony. Synchrony between demand and supply of nutrients. So if a soil is able to synchronize the demand by plant and supply from itself, then it becomes principle of synchrony. So soil should have synchronous supply of nutrients as per demand of the crop. So this is a principle. And how it can be done? We need to use certain special fertilizer. We can use slow release fertilizer. We can use integrated nutrient management practices. We can go for split application of fertilizer. Likewise. So we can make supply as per demand of the crop. That is why we go for a split application. Otherwise, why do not we apply all quantity of fertilizer at the time of sowing? We do not use whole quantity of nitrogen at the time of sowing. We use, say, half amount, generally half amount, or we go for 2 or 3 split application of nitrogen. It is just to match the demand of the crop and just to supply at right stage. So now I think you are clear about principle of synchrony. Number 3 principle is recycling of nutrients. Means it is principle of soil fertility because you have 2 kind of nutrient sources, mainly 2 kind. One is fertilizer, other is organic manures or crop residues. So whenever you add organic manures or plant leaves or crop residues or any organic matter into the soil, soil should have capacity to decompose it, to mineralize it, to recycle it. If soil has good capacity to recycle the nutrients, then supply of nutrients will be better. So therefore, I hope that you are able to understand principles of soil fertility, law of minimum, law of synchrony or principle of synchrony. Number 3 is recycling of nutrients. So these 3 laws or principles are important in case of soil fertility. So overall, as I was suggesting you, the other principles are like prevent soil erosion. If we can prevent soil erosion, we can prevent nutrient losses. And not just nutrient losses we are preventing. We are also preventing water bodies. Water bodies will not be polluted by nitrates, because during the runoff process, if there is excess rainfall will carry away nutrients from the soil and it will deposit these nutrients in the water bodies, in the ponds, in the canals, in the river, or in the oceans. And then problem of eutrophication can happen in water bodies. So we should prevent soil erosion so that eutrophication does not happen in water bodies. Then there will be death of the fish and aquatic animals. So it is important principle. Then maintaining or enhancing organic matter. In soils, if you want to improve health, fertility, and its functioning, then we need to supply adequate organic matter to the soil and also to preserve this organic matter. And now what are the practices that encourage organic matter accumulation in soil? It may include conservation agriculture. It helps in the accumulation of organic matter. Organic farming is yet another option. Agroforestry, regenerative agriculture, etc. So these practices can help to increase organic matter in soil. Then managing soil fertility, we can go for balanced fertilization, integrated nutrient management, crop rotations, etc. Enhancing soil biodiversity. Soil biodiversity means the biodiversity. Let me make you understand what is biodiversity. Biodiversity is the number and variety of species that are present in a particular area, particular region, or particular soil. Means how many different kind of animals, plants, or microbes are found, are available in a particular area, in a particular land, in a particular field. That is called as biodiversity. The variety, the number of species, greater the number of species of animals or plant or living things, greater is the biodiversity. If there are fewer species, then biodiversity will be less. So you may have got chance to visit railway tracks.
Yes, sir.
कभी रेलवे ट्रैक्स पे गए होंगे आपने, बोथ साइड, दोनों साइड आप देखना अलग अलग तरह के झाड़ी, बुशेस, प्लांट तमाम होते हैं. There are large variety of plants, and if you go farmers field, there you will find one or two crops, few weeds, and not very diversity, not high diversity. But if you go to forest, if you go to any wetland, you will find greater biodiversity. अगर wetland में जाओगे पलाश, आपको सुंदरबन में जाओगे तो सुंदरबन में आपको कितनी स्पीशीज मिलेगी, बहुत सारे आपको टाइगर मिलेंगे, बहुत सारे आपको हिरन मिलेगा, और प्लांट की वैरायटी होगी, एक्वेटिक एनिमल होगा, सेमी एक्वेटिक एनिमल होगा. You will have very diverse species. So in that case, biodiversity is high. Or in agro ecosystem where we are doing farming, the agro biodiversity is very low because the number of species is less, therefore less biodiversity. Another important point here I wish to tell you that if above ground biodiversity is more, then below ground biodiversity will also be more. If you have more variety of plants on the earth, in a part on a part of earth, then you will have more bacteria, more variety of bacteria, more variety of mycorrhiza, fungi, or other species in soil. Because these different varieties of plants will release different varieties of root exudates into the soil. And so that if you get diverse food in soil, so definitely you will have diverse species of organisms in the soil. So I think you will trust that it is okay. So we go to the second link. This is going to be over now. So you join again by using second link. So any question from your side? Any clarification?
No.
Is it fine or you want to ask? Please feel free to ask me any question. Or you are able to understand whatever I am teaching?
Yes, sir.
Good. Now you are seeing next slide. There's crop rotation and diversification. So, do you know, Palash, what is crop rotation?
Yes, sir.
So, can you explain me?
So it is the repetitive cultivation of crops
Okay.
or crops and fallow.
No, this is fine here. This is fine. Kajal, you want to make a try?
Yes, sir. Crop rotation is like growing different crop of different nature, like after cereal followed by pulses. So different nature of crops growing in sequence. So that is called crop rotation, or can be together. It can be together or in a sequence.
Very good. So, I think both of you have fair idea of crop rotation. So, it is rotation means just rotating the crop or just changing the crop. Rotate means just to change the crop. Crop rotation is growing of different crops on a piece of land over a fixed period of time. Over a fixed period of time. So there are three important aspects in this crop rotation. Number one, that it is specific to the field. Specific to the field or specific to the farm. On a particular farm. Okay. Number two, that you are rotating the crop. You are changing the crop. This is number two. And number three, a fixed period. Rotation can be made for a fixed period. You can make it for 1 year. You can make it for 2 years. You can make it for 3 years, 4 years, or 5 years. If I make rotation for 1 year, I can say it is rice wheat. If I make rotation for 2 years, I can say it is rice wheat and maize mustard. Is it okay? Field is fixed. Field is fixed. And now we are making rotation for 2 years. I said rice, wheat, and then maize, mustard. So that means in a particular field, we will take 4 crops. We will take 4 crops in 2 years. But here there is no repetition. Here there is no repetition of the crop. You are rotating the crop. You are changing the crop. So I have taken maize crop in first year during Kharif season. I cannot take maize in Kharif season in second year, or vice versa. Suppose I have taken rice first year, Kharif, and then I have taken wheat in Rabi. Okay. Next year, I am taking maize in Kharif and mustard in winter or Rabi. So this is 2-year rotation. And in this rotation, you can see that there is no change, no repetition of the crop. But after 2 years, once the 2 year is complete, I will repeat this rotation. As Palash was saying, it is repetitive growing of crop. It is in that sense we are repeating the crop. After 2 years, we can repeat the rotation. Okay, so that is rotation. Suppose we have 3 years rotation. Now it can be rice, wheat, maize, mustard, and then it can be pulse millet. Suppose, just I am assuming, pulse millet and then potato. Pulse millet in Kharif and potato. So this is, in this you can see there are 6 crops: rice, wheat, maize, mustard, and then pulse millet, potato. This is just hypothetical, I'm telling you. Pulse millet, potato. So in this case, you can see there are 6 crops and there is no repetition of crop, and it is for 3 years. So this is a 3-year rotation, and you can see that within one rotation, there is no repetition of the crop. But once we complete a rotation for 3 years in a field, then we can repeat it for next 3 years. So you can see that in 3-year rotation, any one crop is coming only once. Ye dhyan rakhna. So now you can see that if we have 3-year rotation, the biodiversity is more. Rotation is more in 3-year rotation than in 2-year rotation, or than in 1-year rotation. In 1-year rotation, you have more repetition. Every year you will get same rice in Kharif, same wheat in winter. So here means longer the duration. We should make longer duration rotations. And these longer duration rotations are actually useful. They give us more diversity, more biodiversity. Shorter duration rotations are not good. In any case, longer duration rotations should be recommended. So generally speaking, rotation means at least 2-year rotation should be there. If it is 1-year rotation, then what is use? Because next year you will also grow rice. Next year you will also grow wheat. So rotation should be for a longer period. So whatever we see here. So now you can see after you could follow the actual meaning of rotation. I think you will never forget now how to define rotation, how to make rotation, and what is long-term rotation, what is short duration rotation. So here, crop diversification is achieved. The principle is that we should follow crop diversification. We should follow rotations. So what are the principles of crop rotation? I think each one of you understand that after exhaustive crop, grow less nutrient requiring crop, long duration, short duration crop, cereals, pulses rotation follow karo, jada pani, more water demand, less water demand. I think you all know these principles. So you can study yourself. The last line I have written, you study yourself principles of crop rotation. And definitely here I wish to tell you that rotation has many advantages. If you, Palash, understand that if we have long duration rotation, then incidence of insect, pest, and disease is very less. If you have longer, say 3-year rotation, 4-year rotation, the incidence of insect, pest, and disease is less, much less compared to the shorter duration rotation. For example, if you take just 1-year rotation, rice, wheat, rice, wheat, rice, wheat. So every time you will get more incidence of insect, pest, and disease. because the insect of rice and wheat will get established in the field because their host is repeated frequently. Their host is repeated every year. But if we have longer duration rotation, in 3 years period time, potato will come only once. Pulse millet will come only once. Then the host will not be available for the pest. Oh, and we will also take plants of different family. This is also principle of crop rotation, that plants of different family should be taken. So in that case, the rotations are advantageous because they decrease the incidence of insect pest and disease by way of wiping out the host. Host milega hi nahi. And for your information, if you take rice wheat rotation continuously year after year, one insect which is harmful to rice can also do harm to wheat crop. The name of the insect is red pink stem borer. Pink stem borer. You can write the name of the insect is pink stem borer. It is pest of rice. It is pest of rice, but it is coming in wheat also. That means a particular pest of rice can also infest the wheat crop if we grow rice wheat rotation continuously. So number one advantage, you can see here, point number 3. Point number 3, you can see, Palash, just the growing different crops in a sequence on the same field over time. It breaks the disease cycle. Longer duration, it breaks the disease cycle. Otherwise, disease or pest cycle will continue if your rotation is shorter period, for a shorter periods. It breaks the disease cycles, manage the nutrient levels, because you are extracting nutrients from different depth of the soil. You will get shallow rooted crop, you will get deep rooted crop. So the whole soil volume will be utilized by the plants judiciously, because some nutrients will lie in the deeper layer. And if you take deep rooted crop, that can easily take up nutrients from the deeper soil layer. So the height, the depth of roots should be different for the crops in rotation. So it can also control weeds, insect pests. It improves the soil structure. You are rotating the crop, so the whole volume of soil is being explored by the roots. Roots are reaching every nick and corner of the soil. So entry of roots is kind of biotillage, biotillage. Biotillage happens in soil, which improves your aeration, which improves your soil structure. So you can see here that crop rotation means changing the crops, improves your soil structure, improves water holding capacity, increases carbon or organic matter in soil. So rotation has many advantages. I told you it improves fertility of the soil, it reduces insect pest disease in soil, it reduces weeds in crops, and there are a number of advantages. It saves water also. If your water holding capacity of the soil is improved by way of improved soil structure, then it will save water also, because the soil can hold water for longer time. If water holding capacity is increased, that means losses of water are less through percolation or through evaporation if water holding capacity of soil is high. So number of advantages are there for the crop rotations. So every student of agronomy should know, should have detailed idea about crop rotations. And you can study the principle. Now, after crop rotation, now you see crop varieties. There are certain principles for selection of the varieties and selection of the seed. First thing is that particular variety should be adaptable to a particular region. If you remember that we got a variety recommendation region-wise, state-wise, soil-wise, sometimes soil fertility-wise also. So the recommended varieties should be sown, because the potential, the yield potential can be realized in a particular zone. One variety can give you better growth, better yield in one particular location, particularly for seed production. You see this sorghum, fodder sorghum. Fodder sorghum is grown in Punjab, in Haryana, in Uttar Pradesh, in many parts of the countries. Fodder sorghum is grown. Fodder yield is good in Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh. But when we talk of seed production, so seed production of fodder sorghum is not done in Punjab or Haryana. It is done either in Madhya Pradesh or it is done in Maharashtra. Similarly, you see in case of sunflower. Sunflower can be grown in many places in India, but best seed production happens in Karnataka. So you can see that environment can affect the growth, the yield, and particularly the grain yield of the crop. So selection of varieties is very, very important. That has to be region specific and location specific. Next is seed selection. So there are simple principles that seed should have more germination, more viability. It should be pure, physical purity, genetic purity should be there in the seed, and it should be healthy, it should be disease-free, insect-free, and it should also be weed-free. So it should be as per standards, seed standards you may be knowing. What are seed standards? Seed standard means these are certain specifications for the seed. That seed should have a maximum moisture percent of 10 to 12%, or what should be the physical purity, 98% or 99%, something like that. So those are called as seed standards. So seed should be of standard quality. And then germination testing can be done for seed. As far as possible, we should choose the varieties that are resistant or tolerant to certain biotic and abiotic stresses. Biotic stresses are mainly diseases or insect pests that harm the crop. If a disease comes to a crop, then this is a biotic stress. If our crops are affected by insects, then it is also a biotic stress. If our crops are affected by nematodes or by some other organism, mycoplasma, etc., then this is also biotic stress. Abiotic means non-living. The stresses, the problems, the constraints caused to the crops by some non-living causes. Non-living causes can be soil salinity, can be soil alkalinity, can be high temperature, can be low temperature, can be high rain or high water, or waterlogging in the soil, or conditions are too dry. So these kind of environment are called as abiotic stress. Abiotic environment means non-living environment. Biotic means living organism to living organism interactions. So you know about biotic stresses and abiotic stresses now. Abiotic stresses are due to non-living causes. So we should choose the varieties which have capability to resist biotic and abiotic stresses. Okay, biotic means insect pest and disease resistance, and abiotic means resistance to, in some cases, salinity, to drought, to waterlogging, to adverse temperature, to low temperature, to high temperature, etc., etc. And then variety should have high yield potential. Variety, sometimes people choose varieties for quality traits also. It is not always quantity or yield. Sometimes people choose variety for quality also. You know about rice in India. Some people like specialty rices, basmati rice, kala namak, or number of rices are there. In tea also you have variety of chai हमारी होती है, तो उसके आधार पे भी लोग selection करते हैं crops का. Market demand is also important for variety. Particular variety may have more demand. Availability of seed is also important. So crop varieties, a number of principles are there that guide us selection of seed and selection of variety. So these are the main drivers that lead to a selection of crop varieties and seed. कुछ पूछना है काजल बेटा?
No, sir. Everything is clear. सब
Okay.
ठीक है.
ठीक है. So now similarly choosing the right seed for the right conditions. High seed quality is desirable, as I was telling to you. Genetic and physical purity should be more. Good viability should be there, germination should be there, initial vigor of the seedling should be there initially. Good seed health means disease-free and seed treatment can be done. Now, next is if you are going to plant the crop or sowing, there are certain principles, certain guidelines, certain rules while we are going for planting or sowing. So there are different methods and we can use a variety of propagating materials like seed. Sometimes we use seedlings like transplanting. For some crop, we use seed. In some case, we use propagules, like in case of potato. In case of sugarcane, we use stems, tuber or stem. And we need to put all these seeding materials at right depth. This is principle that we need to put it at right depth and right spacing. So how right depth is decided? Right depth is decided based upon the nature of the seed, nature of the seeding material. Normally, the bolder the seed, more is the sowing depth. Smaller or thin is the seed, less is the depth. For example, take case of chickpea. Chickpea has bolder seeds, so sowing depth is kept around 7 to 10 centimeter. For wheat, it is 4 to 5 centimeter. For rice, it is 2 to 3 centimeter. For barsim, it is surface seeding. So you know about barsim?
Yes, sir. It's a fodder crop.
Good. Barsim is a fodder crop, leguminous fodder crop, and its seed is very small. Seed is very small. So it is normally after puddling, like you go for puddling of rice. After puddling, we broadcast the seed of barsim in the puddled field. Means first you put the water in the field, then plow it in the standing water, which is known as puddling. And then after leveling, you broadcast the seed of barsim. This is how seeding is done. So lighter the seed, generally less is the sowing depth. It is very general rule. Another point is that in sandy soil or light texture soil, under comparable condition, seed depth should be more in lighter soil than in heavy soil. In heavy soil, you can keep shallower depth for the same crop, and in light texture soils, you need to go little deep. For the simple reason that in light soil, the surface layer may have less moisture. So we can put little lower in sandy soils. And there is no restriction for emergence of coleoptile or other seedlings up to certain level. But in heavy texture soils, it is better to plant shallow. So then method of planting, land preparation, there are some principles. Principle of tillage, you can study anywhere. Somebody will teach you tillage. What are the principles of tillage? And you know, broadcasting and line sowing, these are two important methods. Whether you are using animal power or machine power. Line sowing can be done by manual power. Line sowing can be done by plow. Line sowing can be done by seed drill or by cultivator or by any other machinery. We can do line sowing. But broadcasting can be done normally by manual power. Human being can do broadcasting, labor can do, or sometimes machines are also there for broadcasting the seed. Do you know, Kajal, in America, in USA, they broadcast
Yes,
the
sir.
seed of paddy through the aeroplanes, or maybe through helicopters, aerial seeding. In America, they do not go for transplanting. They have hundreds of hectares of land. They have done puddling. Standing water is there. And then they will use helicopter or aeroplane for seeding, paddy seeding. Paddy seeding, they broadcast the seed. So this is practice. So, but that is broadcasting. You cannot sow in line by using helicopter or aeroplane. So, you know, these American, even they use these air power or aeroplane or these helicopters for foliar spray of nutrients or herbicides. And sometimes they go to other countries. They have destroyed coffee plantation in Colombia, I think. One neighboring country is there in South America. where they have killed the coffee crop by using some herbicide. These American people have used some herbicides in Vietnam War also. In Vietnam,
Yes, sir.
they have used some chemicals, herbicide to kill their vegetation. Sometimes they do like this. So anyways, this broadcasting can be done by machine also, by helicopters also, by human being also. But you see, there are certain principles when we can go for broadcasting. There are certain principles that guide us when we should go for planting in rows or at a appropriate spacing. Time of planting is also governed by climate, variety, soil, and desirable harvest date. So all these factors will determine the time of planting, when we should go for planting. Similarly, seed rate is also, there are certain principles that decide the seed rate, like crop. Normally, mustard will need less seed and your cowpea will need more seed. Cowpea need 25 kg seed, mustard requires only 5 kg seed. Wheat will need 100 kg seed and paddy for transplanting 30 kg seed. So the seed varies with the crop and mainly because of the growth habit of the crop. Growth habit of the crop can decide the seed and also the 1000 seed weight, which is also important. That can also decide the seed rate. So you can see crop decide the seed rate. Sometimes for different varieties within a crop, you can have different varieties and then seed requirement may be different. For example, you may have bold seeded varieties and you may have small seeded varieties. So the seed rate of a small seeded variety will be less compared to bold seeded variety. Am I right, Kajal?
Yes, sir.
Because in bold seeded variety, suppose 1 kg, if I take 1 kg seed, suppose there are 100 seeds in 1 kg. But if I take 1 kg small seeded, then there can be 120 seed or 130 seed. Means within the same weight, the number of seed is more in small seeded variety than in bold seeded variety. So therefore, a small seeded variety will need less seed compared to bold seeded varieties. Similarly, soil type. Soil type will affect the seed rate. So means normally the conditions of the soil, particularly moisture condition of the soil. Moisture condition generally, for example, in dryland areas, there little more seed rate is recommended in case of dryland area compared to irrigated area. So soil conditions can also affect the seed rate. And then spacing. Normally, if you have wider spacing, then less seed rate is required. Narrower spacing, more seed rate is required. Similarly, time of planting. Normally, if your planting is delayed, if late planting is done, then you need to use more seed. Like in case of wheat, if it is delayed, late sowing, then the seed should be 25% more than the normal date of planting. So all these factors will affect the seed rate. Next is water and irrigation management. So you will have a complete course, principles and practices of irrigation and drainage management, something like that, irrigation, water management, or some course is there on water management. Do you have a course, Palash?
Yes, sir. In second sem.
Yeah.
In second semester.
So definitely somebody will teach you. I cannot go into the whole course, but I can just touch it from outside, that you have certain principles for water conservation also, which is required. Water conservation, even the name of the course is Principles and Practices of Water Management, something like that. So definitely you will be taught the principles. So here, principles of water conservation, how it can be achieved. Through drip irrigation, we can achieve water conservation, means less water use, through mulching, through rainwater harvesting. Then we can use make the efficient use of the water. Certain principles are there for making efficient use of water, like right amount at right time and avoiding over irrigation. Right amount can be decided by several approaches, and right time, you will be taught in that course. Soil moisture monitoring can be done when exactly to apply the water. Crop water requirements can be determined. Irrigation scheduling means generally, then irrigation scheduling, there are certain principles based upon which we decide the time, depth, and method of irrigation, and then drainage and water quality. So all these water management issues will be tackled in that course. I'm not going into the details, but since the whole course is on principles of water management. Similarly, in case of weed, insect, pest, and disease management, the fundamental principles are like prevention, eradication, and control. Prevention is avoidance or exclusion, eradication, complete removal, and one is control. Different methods are used to control the insect pest, disease, weeds, etc. Here, at this point of time, I would make a suggestion to you that you get some lectures given by Dr. T.K. Das. Dr. T.K. Das is principal scientist here. He is professor also, UG professor. So you talk to Dr. Sunil Mandi and other people so that Dr. T.K. Das delivers some lectures to you. You will be benefited a lot. He is good teacher. He will teach you weed control or weed management. One course is there in MSc, Principles and Practices of Weed Management. I think in MSc, many courses start with Principles and Practices prefixes. So you can make a request, if possible, that we want some lectures from Dr. T.K. Das.
Okay, sir.
Now, definitely, you know what is this particularly in disease management. In disease management, we study these three: avoidance, exclusion, and eradication. These are three principles of disease management. And the above first three principles were related to weeds and insect pests, like prevention, eradication, and control. Similarly, here in disease management, you have three principles: avoidance, exclusion, and eradication. Avoidance means prevent the disease entry. Exclusion means prevent the introduction of inoculum. And eradication, eliminate, destroy, or inactivate. So you can study yourself what is meant by it, but here purpose is to show you that these all are principles which are related to insect pest and disease management. Now, harvesting includes threshing, winnowing, cleaning, and bagging, etc. So harvesting is also important. You know, a stitch in time saves 9. You know the meaning of this, Palash? A stitch in time saves 9. मेरा शर्ट फट गया, अगर उसी दिन मैंने एक टांका लगा दिया, सिल दिया इसको, तो ठीक है. अगर नहीं किया तो ये फटता चली जाएगी, फिर मुझे 9 टांका लगाना पड़ेगा. A stitch in time saves 9. Means it tells us the value of time. We should finish the task in time. Similarly, harvesting can be done at right time. We should do or we should achieve our task at right time. So any crop which is harvested at immature stage, the quality will be compromised, the productivity will be compromised. You will get less productivity, less quality. If it is overripe, if it is over matured, then also you will lose some grains or some seeds. So therefore, harvesting should be done at right time. Winnowing or cleaning is also important. Otherwise, you will not get good price in the market. Attractive bagging or packaging is also important. And drying is also important part here. And it depends on the position of economic part in plant done by cutting, digging, picking, laying, and gathering. So there are different methods for harvesting of the product, depending upon the nature of the product. Some are harvested by cutting, digging like potato, picking like your green peas, laying and gathering. There are principles like principles of deciding the time of harvesting and method of harvesting. Threshing, separating grains from their chaffs or pods. Winnowing means separate the grains from the chaff. Cleaning. Bagging. Post-harvest handling means transport, storage, and processing, etc. is also important. As I told you, this is also part of crop production. Your post-harvest handling, this is done by farmer. Transport done by farmer, storage, as well as processing. So processing is also done. Sometimes farmers have paddy, coarse paddy, rough paddy, and they sell white paddy. They can sell white paddy. They can get it milled. Milling can be done. They can bring back to home and then sell it. This is kind of primary processing or primary milling of the rice. So harvested products are transported manually by bullock carts or by tractor trolley to the storage or directly to the market. And then they can be stored in different structures. The most important structure these days are bins, B-I-N-S, bins. Bins banate hain, bade bins bante hain. They are made up of aluminum or iron or steel. Bins. Pusa bin is one of them. Pusa bin. Processing converts raw material into valuable marketable products. So some processing can be done at farmer's end. And lastly, marketing and profitability. This is to be done. So there are certain principles of marketing also. And it definitely needs deep understanding of the market and producing high quality products. Value addition is important. Segmentation or grading is important. Promotion, pricing, and efficient distribution channels. Profitability in crop production requires farmers to optimize crop yields, control costs. Cost or reduction of cost is also important, and have a sound marketing strategy, mitigate risk, and adopt technology and use resources efficiently. Now, coming to today's last slide. Practices of crop production like crop selection is important. This is in practical term. Farmer has to make a choice, and what kind of manures and what quantity of manure is to be added. It is to be decided by farmers. This is an important practice. Pre-sowing irrigation, whether it is to be done or not, to be decided by the farmer depending upon the moisture availability in the soil. Herbicide application, whether should a farmer will go for pre-emergence or post-emergence or no herbicide application at all. So this is to be decided by conditions and farmer. Similarly, irrigation conditions, irrigation scheduling is to be done by farmer. Water conservation, fertilizer application, weed, insect pest and disease control, drainage, harvesting, post-harvest management, including storage, process, and marketing. So you can see this completes the topic principles and practices. So these are all practices, and principles are guidelines for doing these practices or reasons for doing these practices. So this completes the lecture today. Now I would request you to ask question, whatever you have in your mind. Because I really do not know whether you could follow what I intended to teach you. Any doubt, any question, please ask.
सर पिंक स्टेम बोरर जो है वो वीट के नर्सरी को इफेक्ट करता है ना? अरे वीट के मतलब इनिशियल जो सीडलिंग स्टेज होता है उसको इफेक्ट करता है. ये टर्माइट है? नहीं, टर्माइट नहीं है.
Actually, you know, in rice we got 3 or 4 different kind of stem borers. One is yellow stem borer. Yellow stem borer is most common. Other is white bagged stem borer, zigzag stem borer, and other is pink stem borer. So they are different species, but they have 4 different stages: egg, larva, pupa, adult. So larva can be of yellow color. If larva is of yellow color, then it is known as yellow stem borer in rice. If larva is of pink color, then it is known as pink stem borer of rice. Fine. Now the areas where conservation agriculture is adopted in Pakistani Punjab and in Indian Punjab. We have 2 Punjab on the earth. One Punjab is in Pakistan. Do you know it? Pakistan was divided into 2 parts. When India was divided, so some part of Punjab remained in Pakistan and some came to India. So Indian Punjab and Pakistani Punjab and Haryana, in these 3 parts, they are growing wheat by conservation agriculture. Means after harvest of rice, they go for direct seeding of rice by seed planter, which is known as Happy Seeder. Happy Seeder is a
Mhm.
machine which cut rice residue into small pieces, and in one go, it will do sowing under zero tillage condition, means without tillage, it will do sowing, but simultaneously, same time, it will cut the rice residue which were lying on the surface. First, it will cut rice residue and it will put them on the surface. It will spread the finely cut residues of the rice on the surface of the soil, and it will do sowing. So under these conditions where rice residue or host material was left, so it may have some eggs or some pupa of pink stem borer. And when you grow wheat, so it started attacking wheat croppers. So many insects are polyphagous. Many insects are polyphagous. They can eat a variety of plants. So it has become polyphagous. Before it was confined to rice. So what happens at seedling stage, at early stage, the pink color larvae enters the stem from the lower parts of the stem. In wheat, stem is called as culm, C-U-L-M. So it enters the culm, and from inside, it eats the inside part, and then the top central leaves, young leaves will become brown in color, which is called as dead heart. It will give symptom of dead heart, and symptom of dead heart come during the seedling stage or early tilling stage. So it affects wheat croppers. You can know more by typing red, pink stem borer in wheat, so that you can have little more knowledge about this pest. But what I said you is correct. So